Well, the Washington Post is reporting that ahead of President Trump's rally in Oklahoma last weekend, his campaign directed the removal of thousands of stickers that read, "Do not sit here, please." Those stickers were placed by event management there at the BOK Center in Tulsa. They were meant to keep people safe and establish social distancing.
Clearly, the campaign wanted to pack as many people as tightly as possible there. Well, the Trump campaign communications director didn't address the incident, saying only that the event was, quote, in full compliance with local requirements. At least 8 staffers have tested positive since that rally, and several of the campaign's top officials decided to self-quarantine afterwards rather than go back to the office.
Let's bring in now Dr. Jennifer Caudle, a family physician in Pennsylvania, and Dr. Rob Davidson, an emergency room physician in Michigan and executive director of the Committee to Protect Medicare. Thank you both for being with us this morning. Dr. Caudle, I want to start with you. Your reaction to this reporting from the Washington Post that there were 12,000, according to their reporting, stickers placed to space people out. And hell, they could have left the stickers up there. 6,200 people, according to the fire marshal, showed up at the president's rally. They could have filled the seats between the stickers, but they had them removed. Your thoughts?
It's disappointing. And good morning, by the way. Thank you so much for having me. This is disappointing. These social distancing stickers is a great idea, right? This is what we want to be doing. We want to encourage people to social distance, wear masks, hand hygiene, all of these preventive measures. We know what science says, and the science says that social distancing, among the other things I mentioned, are the things we need to be doing. Removing the stickers, I don't quite understand, and it's disappointing because we need to enforce that. We need to remind people to distance where possible. I go to the local drugstore, even in the building that I live in Philadelphia, there are social distancing stickers on the floor telling you where to stand to wait for elevators, where to stand when you're in line to check out your food at the local drugstore. These things are important. Not only does it give people guidance, but it also reinforces this message that we are all in this together and we all need to work together to stop coronavirus by doing what we know is right based on science.
Dr. Davidson, the vice president at this task force briefing this week, tried to defend the decision to hold these mass rallies. You think that the vice president should not even attend these meetings. Why?
Yeah, I called for him to be removed from the task force very early on, as did my committee of doctors across the country. And I just think he has proven himself not to have the interests of the American people at heart, really to be playing to an audience of one, President Trump. The doctors on that stage, all of the healthcare folks on that stage were wearing masks. They took them off briefly when they went up and spoke, and Vice President Pence was not. So he may speak a good game. He says one thing, but then he and the president and at President Trump's rallies, the participants are doing completely the opposite. And I think it's a dangerous message to send to the American people.
Dr. Caudle, the mayor of Miami-Dade County announced that beaches and parks will be closed for Independence Day weekend, I believe starting Friday to Tuesday. There's no drinking in bars in Florida. Bars are closing in Texas. Other states are pausing. Are these limits and limitations and changes enough to meet the surge that we're seeing?
I'm not sure that it's going to be enough, but it's certainly welcome. I personally felt, and I think a lot of people felt, that there were parts of the country that were reopening too fast and too much too soon. The way I feel about where we are now is, first of all, it's unfortunate that we're sort of going backwards. We need to do whatever we can to slow the spread of coronavirus. That means pulling back, and in some places and in some ways, perhaps shutting back down. So the idea of closing sort of parks and beaches, et cetera, no, that's the right move. That is the right thing to do. What we hope is that it's going to make a big enough difference and that other measures such as that continue because, again, we will see a lag. What's happening today, we may not see the results of until 2 weeks from now. So the more we can do, the better. So it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Speaking of that lag, Dr. Davidson, back in March and April when we saw daily highs near these new peaks of new cases, we also saw the crisis of PPE shortages. We saw the crisis of the search for ventilators. Is there evidence that hospitals are better prepared for this impending rush of patients potentially into hospitals?
Well, what I can say from personal experience and from every physician I've spoken with across this country, we are still using our PPE not in the way they were intended. I have an N95 mask clearly on the box, and I posted a picture on Twitter. It says "Do not reuse," and we are using them for 5 shifts. They're doing UV light sterilization in between. We know the integrity of those masks is less than they are when they come out of the package. We don't know how much less, and we know we're putting ourselves at risk. So yeah, it hasn't been fixed, despite what the vice president says. He quotes very big numbers of millions and millions of masks sent around the country, but the need is greater than what has been provided by this administration's actions, and yeah, it's still a problem.
Dr. Davidson, let me stay with you for this. The president highlighted in a couple of tweets on Saturday the administration's brief filed this week to the Supreme Court asking for it to invalidate the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, when you've got tens of millions of people who rely on that for health care. So many, especially now with the highest unemployment rate since the Great Depression. What would that mean for that to be invalidated right now?
My poor rural county had about 20% of our residents benefit from expanded Medicaid under the ACA. Under normal conditions, this is devastating to those folks and to people across this country. In the setting of the pandemic, in the setting of unknown long-term risks of having had the coronavirus, we do know some people are showing signs of long-term lung function decreases, and this is critical. And taking it away this time, it just adds a level of cruelty to the already devastating effects of people losing their insurance. So it's kind of bewildering. It seems to be something that they've been bent on doing, and he's moving forward.
Dr. Caudle, as we wrap here, and people are planning their vacations potentially for Independence Day weekend, is it, as the vice president called it, encouraging news that more than 40% of the new cases of coronavirus are people under the age of 35?
Yeah, I wouldn't quite put it that way. It's a good thing that we know that in younger people tend to fare better in terms of the sequela and severe complications of COVID. That is a fact, that young people are not as ill, but young people can still spread it to older people and those that may have weakened immune systems, et cetera. And this is what I also need to say. One thing we don't talk about was what my colleague just mentioned. Just because young people tend to fare better doesn't mean that they always do. I have had patients that are young and healthy that end up with strokes, that have loss of taste or smell that lasts 4 weeks after they've recovered from COVID, that the shortness of breath continues, and the fatigue, et cetera, even after they have recovered. Just because younger people may do better doesn't mean they always do, and that it'll be just a cold or a walk in the park for them. So I really, really encourage people to not take any risks or any chances with this. It's really important that we wear our masks, that we social distance, and that especially in places where COVID is increasing, it's honestly best to stay home.
Yeah, the Lancet Journal just published a study showing some of the severe side effects, the impacts of coronavirus for those under the age of 50. You may survive, but there will be some consequences potentially. Dr. Jennifer Caudle, Dr. Rob Davidson, thank you so much.
Thank you.